wondering why Falcon 9 is still sitting there on the pad as we move past that T0. We did have a scrub for weather today, just not able to clear all of those constraints. We keep a very close eye on the weather around the pad and their whole way
Dragon
uphill.
SpaceX for weather.
Right now, Bob and Doug are still inside
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead for weather.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you some more words on the scrub rationale. Yeah, so we basically scrubbed due to 3 rules that we were violating. They were natural lightning, the field mills, and the attached anvil.
Yeah, we copy, Jay. We appreciate that update. We could see some raindrops on the windows and just figured that whatever it was too close to the launch pad at the time we needed it not to be. So we appreciate that and understand that everybody's probably a little bit bummed out. It's just part of the deal. Everybody was ready today, and we appreciate that, and the ship was great. And we'll do it again, I think, on Saturday.
Copy all, and yeah, we concur. And appreciate your resilience sitting there in the vehicle for us.
We got the easy job. Nothing better than being prime crew on a new spaceship.
Copy that.
All right, some great words from Bob and Doug. They're feeling good inside Dragon. They'll be ready to go when we make our next attempt on Saturday. Right now, we're just still waiting for all of the fuel to come off the Falcon 9 rocket. After
Stage 1
that,
LOX and fuel roughly 20%, and Stage 2 fuel 36%.
and so that call right there, we're still at a little over 20% on fuel, RP1, and LOX, liquid oxygen, on the first stage, and then at about 26% on RP1 on that second stage. So again, it takes about 40 minutes once the process starts, so we should have right around 30 minutes or so until all that fuel's off. And then the crew will get the go to disarm the launch escape system. We'll see that crew access arm swing back into place, and they can begin to egress or get out of the Dragon spacecraft.
And you heard it live, that weather update of what we violated. We were just 10 minutes off, unfortunately, but again, today was an instantaneous launch. And as John explained, it's due to the orbital mechanics and making sure that at the time we launch, it will allow us to get to the space station on time and accurately. So you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. They do still have their visors on and still strapped into their seats. The launch escape system is still armed right now as we are offloading fuel, and will not disarm until prop offload is complete. And this is just to ensure the safety
quick.
Yeah, Dan, what I saw coming out of the Air Force was 40% probability of violation, I believe. It's always tough because they report in terms of violation, and the optimists have to subtract that from 100% to go, hey, 60% chance, I'll plan my picnic. We were listening, the SpaceX launch director, Mike Taylor, was talking to the launch weather officer asking about the 3 criteria that scrubbed us today. It sounds like in another minute or two, the lightning and the attached anvil cloud rules will clear. The field mill rule, charge in the atmosphere, is still bouncing around, and so, hey, we may need several more minutes before that one would clear. So we'd need even longer than 10 minutes in the window today, it looks like, for all the rules to clear. That brings up what I wanted to mention a little while ago. I got lost listening to the weather brief. But there are a lot of folks who are going, why an instantaneous launch window for Falcon 9 and Dragon? Now, typically when we go to the space station, when we do the mission planning, it's an instantaneous window. There may be enough performance in the rocket to launch somewhere in a 5-minute period, but you've got to pick a time in there. But in the case of Falcon 9, once we start propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, it doesn't matter so much if you can move 5 or 10 minutes left or right, because the whole sequence is scripted. We do the flight analysis assuming that the temperatures of the propellants are below a certain amount so that we know how much performance is available to the rocket, how much margin we're going to have. So essentially, if you start the countdown, 4 hours, 8 hours out like we were doing today, and you have a very short window, once you get into propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes, you have to go as soon as you get to 0. We don't have the ability to stop the countdown, wait 5 minutes. Now all of a sudden the liquid oxygen starts warming up from 340 degrees below 0 in the ground system, and that changes how much performance you get carrying into orbit, and we don't want to cut into those margins. Now, if we had had something like a 4-hour window, which some communication satellites have, we could actually get down to almost 0, hold the count, detank the Falcon 9, wait a while, it takes us about an hour and a half, reload a whole new batch of cold liquid oxygen and fuel from the big storage tank that we've got there at Pad 39A, and try to launch again. But in that case, you have to be able to launch, about an hour and a half or so later after you scrub. And in the case of the International Space Station, an hour and a half from now, it's nowhere near where we need to be to get to orbit with the performance of the Falcon 9 and the Dragon. So today, it's a combination. We start the day with a 1-second window.
Yeah, just inform you.
But once we get inside of 35 minutes, it becomes an instantaneous window for the Falcon 9, regardless of what the customer may be able to give us. So there's a little explanation for folks who are wondering why we have such a tight window. Right now, it looks like we are bringing the last bits of fuel off of the stage, and liquid oxygen is just about off of the stage. So things are clocking right along per the 40-minute timeline. Everything looks good, and we'll wait to hear that we're clear, and then when we get the call for Bob and Doug to go ahead and disarm launch escape system, and the crew access arm will watch come back out, center itself around the Dragon hatch, and then the ingress team will go up there and open the hatch.
Thank you for the science lesson, John I.
Hey, no charge.
Much appreciated.
We did hear a quick call to the crew there. We should be just under 10 minutes away from that prop offload completing. It looks like we're just tracking
Stage 2
the
fuel offload
RP1
is complete.
And there we have the confirmation. Stage 2 offload's complete, and we should have now just the RP1, so that densified propellant, or the RP1 is kerosene. We should be under 10%, a little under 10 minutes until that's off. And then we'll step through those events we were discussing, where they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, get the arm back out there, and Bob and Doug can begin to exit the Dragon spacecraft. Still not the friendliest skies in the background.
That is Florida, though. The weather is constantly changing over there, which is why we always have to keep an eye on it through every single launch that we have out there. Bob and Doug are patiently waiting. As you can see, that is a live view of them on the Crew Dragon vehicle as they're waiting prop offload to complete. Second stage prop offload is complete. We are just waiting on first stage to
Stage
complete.
1 box offload is complete. Waiting on stage 1 fuel, roughly 5 minutes or so.
And again, the launch escape system is still armed. We are waiting for a prop offload to complete before they disarm that, and then they will be able to egress from the Crew Dragon vehicle.
And we just heard we should be just under 5 minutes away from the last of that fuel coming out of the Falcon 9 first stage. And then we'll see those events start to pick back up, and we'll see the crew arm swing back out. They've been in those seats for a couple hours now. They typically get inside of Dragon a little over 2.5 hours ahead of launch. So they've been strapped into these seats for quite a while. They are custom sized though, so they're as comfortable and as snug as possible. Obviously, since they're going to be in them for a really long time, but most importantly, when you're doing that splashdown at the very end of the mission, it's your car seat, and splashing down or landing on land is not the most gentle of procedures in a capsule. So just really making sure that they're snug inside of that Dragon capsule. But we should be a little under 5 minutes away from the prop offload being completed.
And as Dan mentioned, those suits are custom made, but the seats are also custom fit for each astronaut as well. They do remain on Crew Dragon for this mission for almost 24 hours about, so we do want to make sure that they are comfortable and make sure that the suits and the seats are comfortable enough for them to stay in that position for a while. I believe when they get into orbit, they are allowed to get out of their seats and get a little bit more comfortable, but it's a long ride for them.
Yeah, once they do get on orbit, they are able to get out of the seats and actually out of their suits too, since for this flight path today, it was going to take them about 19 hours. So Bob and Doug would actually have had about 8 hours to sleep on board the Dragon capsule. So we weren't able to launch today, though. The rendezvous on Saturday should be very similar to what we would have had if we launched today, where it'll take them about 19 hours to get to the International Space Station. So they'll launch, and they'll have a number of different events that we'll be able to walk you through, including manual piloting of Dragon and just really putting the spacecraft through all of the paces before it arrives at the International Space Station. Because, again, this is a test flight. And this is this last test before we certify the Dragon spacecraft for regular crewed flights, which will just be bringing up those long duration, 6-month, maybe even a year-long missions.
Right. And it should be a very exciting test flight because it's pretty much like an actual mission. When Bob and Doug get on the station, they will be performing some research while they're up there, performing tests and doing some final things for this demonstration mission.
But I mean, just for right now, we are just going to continue to stay with them until we see them come out of Dragon, because the launch escape system's still armed while we wait for this propellant offload to complete. That's just done as a safety measure. Anytime you have rocket propellants beneath you, you want to make sure that we have a good way for them to get out of the way. And so we should be within just a couple of minutes for that final bit of RP1 coming off the first stage, and then we'll hear the crew get the go to disarm that launch escape system. We'll see the crew access arm swing back in. But if you're just tuning in, expecting them to be in space, we did have a scrub today due to weather. Our next launch attempt is going to be this Saturday, May 30th at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time. And just like we did today, we're going to be bringing you every single step of the way. It's going to look a little familiar if you watched all of today's, but it's going to be just as exciting.
I can imagine it might even be more exciting with all the anticipation that we've hyped this launch up for, with already going through it all today. But again, the more practice we have, the better off we will be. Hopefully next launch attempt we will have a flawless launch and actually be able to lift off with good weather.